The U.S. continues on its own in terms of the better.
Hello and welcome to Bloomberg Quint. You're watching Insolvency Diaries. The suspense on who'll take home Essar Steel is finally over. Well, at least for now. The Ahmedabad bench of the NCLT has approved the resolution plan of ArcelorMittal. In doing so, it has also suggested to the creditors committee of Essar Steel to consider paying 15% of the total amount to operational creditors. Let me emphasize, this is only a suggestion and not a direction from the NCLT bench. The written order is likely to be out on Monday, but as the bench finished pronouncing the crux of its order, the promoters of Essar Steel, which is the Ruyas, and several operational creditors asked the bench to grant a stay on this order. We don't yet know what the exact grounds were, but the bench said that until the written order is out, which is likely to be on Monday, it can't grant a stay. My colleague Vishwanath Nair is here, who's had several conversations with the lawyers on both sides to help us understand of what played out in NCLT and what is potentially going to be in the written order. Vishwanath, first and foremost, have you spoken to any of the lawyers who could give us an insight into on what basis and on what grounds the Ruyas and the operational creditors asked for a stay on this NCLT order?
Right, Payaswini. So one must remember that all of this is happening in a very short time frame and amidst a lot of confusion. So clarity on this at this point in time is skim. What we do understand is that the lawyer said that there is a case that the promoters have filed with NCLT. Basically, this is challenging the January 29 decision that the NCLT took, where they said that the right to settle loans depends only on the entity that had actually filed the case, which was Standard Chartered Bank and State Bank of India in this case, in Essar Steel's case. And then they kicked out the promoters' resolution settlement
offer. Yeah.
But what the promoters are essentially saying is that since there is a challenge pending at the NCLT and there is no decision has been made in that case, you cannot allow the creditors to accept the funds from ArcelorMittal, because then the whole point is moot. At this point in time, what the NCLT judges have said is that the written order is still pending. Let that come out, and then we can probably hear you out on what your arguments in this regard are. But at this point in time, there is no stay as such given to either parties, the operation creditors or the promoters in this matter, and the approval stays as it is.
Okay, so I'm guessing the first thing Ruyas will have to do is probably take this to the NCLT or wait until the NCLT order is out. I want to get your the conversations that you've had with some of the lawyers on what they have said on this suggestion by the NCLT bench that consider giving 15% of the total offer of ArcelorMittal to operation creditors. What are the numbers in terms of the offer, and 15% of it comes to how much versus what these operational creditors were actually getting? Give us the numbers for it.
Sure. So, if you remember, 40 operational creditors had opposed ArcelorMittal's plan. Essentially, they're saying that the money that is being allotted to them in this plan is not enough. To give you some background, ArcelorMittal's plan was 42,000 crore for all dues of Essar Steel, including financial creditors as well as operational creditors. In that, about 196 crore was slotted for the operational creditors in this case. What they are saying is that, what the operational creditors are saying is that that is not enough. Our claims are not being met adequately, and therefore maybe the bidder should revisit their plan, set aside more money. Now, instead
if I can quickly add here, they had made two pleas that either you tell ArcelorMittal to increase the amount that is being allocated to us, or you consider the promoters of Essar's settlement offer, which is giving us a far higher allocation.
Correct.
Rather, complete dues are getting paid in that, right?
Correct. So the promoters had offered about 54,400 odd crore to settle all of the dues, including financial creditors as well as operational creditors. But what the operational creditors essentially said is that either ArcelorMittal matches that bid, or you could probably go ahead with a settlement plan because there our recovery rate is much higher. The NCLT, instead of deciding on this matter, has essentially suggested to the COC. Now, remember that this is a suggestion because the COC is the only body which decides how the funds are to be distributed amongst the various creditors. So this suggestion will go to the COC now. The COC will hold a meeting in the coming few days once the written order is out, and then they can decide on what they want to do with the money, whether they want to give more money or not. 100% this is you know, a matter of decision making for the COC, but there might be some kind of legal challenges that may come up because the operational creditors may not be happy with what the you know, financial creditors finally decide on their matter, because you know, it's a decision that they're going to take, and they're obviously, financial creditors are obviously planning all of this on the basis of you know, what the returns from the assets are, depending on the kind of provisions they would have to make on the on their loan books, as well as finally what is the recovery amount that they're going to get. There is also the matter of Standard Chartered Bank in this entire case. So Standard Chartered Bank has so far been treated as an unsecured creditor in the matter. They have been claiming that they're a secured creditor. Their case was also pending at the NCLT. The NCLT in its order also, what we understand from lawyers is that they have not really decided on Stancy's you know, status in this entire matter. What they have essentially said is that as part of this 15% that you have to offer. So 15% of 42,000 crore, it works out about 6,300 odd crore.
Yeah, compare that to what, 197 crores?
196 crore for the operation creditors. So obviously it's a much higher amount. But remember that in ArcelorMittal's plan, Stancy is likely to get about 60 crore is what we understand from our sources. But Stancy's claims are in excess of 2,500, 2,800 odd crore. So, you know, it depends on what the COC finally decides in this matter, and then, you know, will decide how exactly these funds are going to be distributed. But we could expect some further challenges from both these parties as well as the promoters who are already at the NCLT.
Okay, all right. So we've dealt with what the NCLT said on this day. We've dealt with the 15% number, though we will be able to tell our viewers the basis of this 15% once we get the written order from NCLT. The third point I wanted to bring up was that for the total number of operational creditors that were challenging the ArcelorMittal plan was 40 odd,
yes.
Right? Out of those, 8 were dealt with in the last week of February. And the NCLT had passed a written order.
Yes.
Do you want to take us through the reasons as to what the NCLT held in the case of those 8 that might potentially give us an insight into what's coming out for the remaining 42 of them?
Right. So that order was passed in the last week of February. What essentially the NCLT said at that point in time is that, you know, the operational creditors are claiming that there is some kind of, you know, discrimination between creditors in this case, because obviously they are getting much lesser as compared to the financial creditors who are considerably clearing off their books with respect to the Essar Steel case through this deal. And while the lender side, the COC side, claimed that the plan is as per all the norms that are laid out in the IBC, and there is no discrimination in this matter. So what the NCLT finally said in their order was that we are at this point in time reviewing ArcelorMittal's plan. This was, remember, in the last week of February. So at that point in time, the plan was still in discussion.
Sure.
So on the basis of our outlook, we will decide on what to do with the operational creditor claims. At that point in time, remember, these 8 claims were dismissed by the NCLT. But they said that we will decide on how exactly these need to be treated, whether the COC needs to sort of, you know, reallocate the money in a certain way so that the operational creditors get paid out slightly more than what they're owed. In the meantime, the operational creditors have also, you know, tried to appeal to ArcelorMittal, seeking, you know, sort of an out-of-court discussion where they're trying to see if ArcelorMittal can give them more money. Of course, after this order, now this 15% is going to be a bit of a contentious issue, and that is what we need to look out for in the written order, as well as what exactly the COC decides at the end of the day. But what happens to these operational creditors, these 8, and what happens to the other 32 whose cases are you know, still pending, whether the COC will consider all of these claims and payouts, slightly higher payouts for these operational creditors, or whether they feel that the plan is intact, it's fine in the way it has been designed, and it can continue with the way you know, the payouts have been planned at this stage. So these are all things that will come out in the next few days. So we'll have to wait and watch about that.
Sure. Okay. So just to recap for our viewers, the only facts that we know from NCLT Ahmedabad bench today is today are that ArcelorMittal's resolution plan for Essar Steel has been approved, and it seems like that the NCLT has reposed its faith in the judicial, or rather in the commercial sort of wisdom of the COC, because it has only made a suggestion and not given a direction to allocate more money to operational creditors. But another interesting case came up in NCLT Ahmedabad today, and while we have your attention, and Vishwanath has some insights in that also, Alok Industries also came up for final pronouncement of order. Vishi, give us some background on what happened today in the court.
Right. So Alok, just like Essar, was one of the 12 large cases that the RBI had shortlisted for insolvency proceedings back in June 2017. This case has already been through a round of hearings, a round of seeking bidders, and finally the NCLT at that point, the COC at that point in time had decided that we should go for liquidation because none of the plans that are on the table are worth pursuing. At that point in time, only Reliance Industries and JM Financial, they have a combined bid for the case. They were offering about 4,500 odd crore as opposed to about 19,000 crore worth of dues that were pending for the case. So they decided to not go with RIL's plan. They decided that the case should go for liquidation. The NCLT heard their arguments. They also heard the arguments of all the employees of Alok Industries who were at that point in time agitating that if the company shuts down, their livelihood is in question. So what the NCLT said is that probably we could revisit the RIL plan, and maybe the lenders and the bidder could discuss slightly better terms and then come for a final order. They did that, and finally the lenders decided that let's go with RIL. But RIL at that point
the same amount.
At the same amount. There was no change in the amount that they were offering, but RIL was seeking some relief on the stamp duty side of the story. But the NCLT, in the order that they passed today, said that, leave that issue aside. That is not something that we want to get into at this point in time. Let's approve the RIL plan the way it has been submitted to us, and RIL and JM Financial together can take over Alok Industries' assets and probably take care of the company from there on. So that is also an important case, because while we're talking about Essar Steel, 583 days, it's a very long period of time for a case to be resolved as compared to the 270 days that are mentioned in the IBC. There, the lenders have lost a lot of money in terms of interest cost. Sure. Last night we did a story about this. On the back of an envelope calculation, approximately about 9,900 crore worth of interest cost has been lost within these 583 days. Admittedly, the period from admission of the case to the first 270 days is may not be appropriate to look at, but still, it's a considerable amount of money that
250 days already more.
Yeah, so they've passed the double of the time limit that has been allocated under the IBC. That's one case, but you also have Alok Industries, which has seen a sort of similar timeline over 500 days, was still pending some kind of resolution. Lenders had at one point in time already decided to liquidate the asset. But it's interesting to see that two resolution plans are being passed on the same day, and finally, two most contentious cases in the top 12, they're getting resolved.
They're seemingly near the finish line, seemingly, at least. Yes. I don't know about Essar, because there is a multiple round of litigation that already from the Essar Steel statement that we can make out, who's still claiming that their settlement offer is valid. Vishwanath, thank you so much for giving us some insights of whatever we could gather from the lawyers who were present at the NCLT Ahmedabad bench today. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back with more details and more insights on the Essar Steel case once the final order is out. Thank you.